Good evening, and thank you for joining me on What Do You Think, a call-in program in which you can participate with the discussion, regardless of the topic. My name is Bill Morse, and I try to bring up a topic or something that I feel would be of interest to the general public. By the way, today is Thursday, the 26th of August. And if you missed the program tonight, it is always posted about a day or so later on YouTube under Falls Area Community TV. What Do You Think, again, is the name of the program. So I wanted to give a brief product endorsement since I brought it here today. It's not a DeWalt grinder, cordless grinder. This time, it's a bottle of tonic water. This one happens to be Polar out of Worcester, Mass. But tonic water with quinine. I drink this because it has quinine in it, and quinine is very good. It's medicinal. I had leg cramps waking up in the morning, and quinine was recommended. So since I've been drinking quinine water on nearly a daily basis, the cramps in my legs have gone. And quinine, as I said before, has healing characteristics. And next time you're at the store and they're not charging you $2 for a bottle, often you can get them on sale for $10 or $1 a bottle, sometimes less, and pick up a couple of bottles. The diet, I wouldn't recommend so much. I know they take the sugar out, but I don't think there's really that much sugar. The taste, it's a matter of taste. Anyway, I wanted to give a shout out and a thank you to Governor Phil Scott here in Vermont. I noticed in the Vermont Digger, which is an online newspaper that covers mostly the Burlington area in the northeast part of the state and Montpelier, the seat of our local state government. And they carried an article in which Governor Scott has been receiving pressure to reintroduce restrictions and mandates because of growing fears over the latest variant of virus that has had people sick and in some cases very sick. And I'm speaking directly, or I'm speaking hoping that perhaps a message somehow can get through to some of our legislative members. I'm thinking particularly of the House Majority Leader from Burlington, the Senate President from Windham, and the Mayor of Burlington, the city itself. These people and others are sponsoring increased mask mandates in our schools, reintroduction of social restrictions as to the number of people where they may publicly congregate and for what purpose. And I wanted to, and in some cases, there's also support right now for municipal employees, teachers, policemen, first responders definitely, but also other municipal employees to be vaccinated or to face termination of their employment. Now, I know this is a big concern in the West Coast, San Francisco, San Diego, Los Angeles, and I also believe Chicago have placed, New York have placed dates in September whereby the vaccination becomes mandatory. And I came across, someone sent me a video of a fire department captain in Los Angeles that very eloquently, I thought, stated another position in response to this call for mandates. And I'm hoping that the mayor of Burlington, the Senate President, and the House Majority Leader somehow listen to this other point of view in addressing people's fear They're very often legitimate because the information is contradictory. The narrative seems to change almost on a weekly basis, and many people are understandably upset. So if we could roll the beginning of that video and just listen to maybe about 6 or 7 minutes in which the captain addresses other firefighters.
I'm a captain with the Los Angeles City Fire Department. I'm a 31-year veteran with this agency. And I'm more than likely going to catch total grief from my administration from this. But I am done being silent on this matter. And so are many of our members. And this is regarding the vaccine mandate by the City of Los Angeles for all city employees. We saw this tyranny coming. We saw it coming across the Pacific. And a week and a half ago, it landed in Honolulu with the Honolulu Fire Department. And we watched a passionate plea from Captain Pelikai, literally in tears, being forced to resign because he chose not to take the vaccine. Forced to leave the department after faithfully serving it for years. Then it landed on our coast. It hit San Francisco. It hit San Francisco fire. And we heard the stories up there. Our union representation stood by idly and played a wait and see. And sat on their hands. Well, now it's here in Los Angeles. And the mandate has come down from the mayor and the city council that we, all city employees, including first responders, shall take the vaccine. If we do not take the vaccine, we have to be subjected to testing twice a week. If we refuse that, termination. Again, I'm a 31-year veteran of this department. I have literally bled for this department. I used to love coming to work. I respected the administration of this department at one point. I even respected our union leadership. And now they are in lockstep with total tyranny. I want you to be clear on this. I want everyone to be clear on this. This is not about politics. This is not about left or right. This is not about red versus blue. This is not about Republican versus Democrat. This isn't even about vaccinated versus unvaccinated. This is tyranny. This is about freedom of choice. The department has said that we can seek medical exemptions if we so choose, if we can. That is a pie in the sky. We can even try and seek some kind of religious exemption, but they know that they have end runs around those. The vaccinations will come. And then after that, it will be a booster and another booster and another booster. And when will this end? When will this tyranny stop?
Okay, very good. So, Kurt, you're on the line. Do you have any reaction before I just say one or two words, and then I'm going to explain why I wanted to thank Phil Scott. I forgot. But Kurt, if you have anything to say in response to what the chief just iterated.
Well, actually I do, and I'm presupposing that you don't necessarily agree with my thoughts on this, but
Doesn't
asked,
matter.
and I'll give them to you.
It doesn't matter.
Basically, it's quite conclusive just by numbers of what we're hearing from the South, where people have chosen not to take the vaccine, how the numbers are now suddenly shooting up. Some states are now having filled hospitals, and the thing is the gentleman remarked that I agree in terms of, yes, I'm not going to call it tyranny, but it is kind of a loss of your rights. But every time the government creates a law, you lose a little piece of rights. But this thing is really about your fellow man. And there is no question that the vaccine does assist us. If we have to take booster shots periodically, well, guess what? I've had a flu shot for the last 20 years, every year. I mean, this is something that isn't unusual. Now that some of the vaccines, one of them at least has been federally recognized, the second one's coming along right behind it, and there have not been any large negative results from having the vaccine. I think it's proven itself a benefit to us. The thing is, I feel personally myself a responsibility to other people around me I can still be a carrier even though I have had both shots. And the thing is, I might survive it, but I may come across, someone's child. Children haven't been approved below 12 to take these. And I'm very concerned about kids going to school. They definitely need to go to school. There's big questions about whether there should be masks in school, whether they could be mandated or not. But I don't know what's going to protect the children. Doing nothing certainly isn't going to help. So anyway, I feel very unfortunate for the gentleman's position. But I think, growing up in the 50s and 60s when I took voluntarily and happily the Salk vaccine and the Sabin vaccines when they came out against polio, I mean, I don't see this terribly different, except we're dealing with a foe that is lethal. Polio didn't necessarily kill you, but it would leave you crippled for the rest of your life. Here we have a situation to try to save certainly the fringe of older people and certainly the younger ones. We're finding now young children are now in hospitals. So I can't really sympathize with the guy. I really realize, I think it's everybody's right to have a choice. But the thing is, I think there's a responsibility you have to fellow humans. So that's what I think. Thank you for the opportunity.
No, that's quite all right. I think it's also, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate a number of your points. The captain, what was his, Captain Granucci. Captain Granucci mentioned that there is the option of weekly testing. Personally, I don't have anything against weekly testing if it doesn't involve use of other drugs. if it's, I remember being tested myself with a swab up the nose, and I believe now there's another test where it's less intrusive. Unfortunately, the testing got off to a rocky start because people were tested positive and they were not positive. And they were tested negative and they weren't negative. So the testing, perhaps it was rushed. My concern is that the rush towards mass vaccination, whereby the pharmaceutical company or the government that is mandating the injections is not liable, legally liable. There are no liabilities. In other words, if I have a bad reaction, let's say 2 or 3 years down the line, I have no legal recourse against the person who mandated that I get the vaccine or the pharmaceutical company that manufactured the vaccine. So I hope that the people that are troubled will take advantage of this weekly testing. I'm fine with that, but and if they do come up positive through accurate testing, then they get quarantined and they get better, they get treated. But I'm also the vaccinations. The FDA approved the vaccination on an emergency basis. It's not like, the flu vaccine that gets, or flu vaccine that is okayed. It's, we're still in an emergency status. And as you know, Kurt, it takes a couple of years of testing and trial and error to work out the quirks. You mentioned polio. We talked about polio and the difficulties they had in 1955. They pulled the polio vaccine because second graders were having a very bad reaction to the vaccine. And it wasn't until 1962, 7 years later, that a reliable vaccine was produced that was not worse than what was not worse than the situation it was trying to correct. So I just threw this out there because it seems to be a pattern. I know the New York City Police Union has said no to mandatory vaccines. I'm assuming, as is the case in Los Angeles, that people are given the option of weekly testing. So you take a weekly test. And as long as that doesn't involve the introduction of drugs or something, it's not invasive, then if it's a passive test, then fine, as long as the test is accurate. And I hope by now the test is accurate after a year and a half through this situation. So anyway, I wanted to just, the thank you to Phil Scott. He's under pressure now to do something to come back with the mask wearing and the mandates. And I have trouble with this because we had students that, through what I thought was an overreach, were taken out of school in April and missed the rest of the school year. My concern would be with special education students as well as regular education students not getting the education they deserve. And I'll leave it at that. I don't think distance learning works. In many cases, some cases, classroom learning doesn't work. Especially you've got situations, Bellows Falls, for example, 25% of the student population is special education. So 25% of the students were not getting any services the period during that initial lockdown of the schools. So then we had increased suicides, we had increased alcohol, we had increased drug rates. I really feel that this needs more honest discussion. And Kurt, I'm going to leave it at that unless there's something else you would like to add.
No. I mean, this is a tough topic, and you certainly have people 180 degrees out in terms of their thoughts about it. This is all new to all of us. A year and a half ago, we couldn't have dreamed this would have happened. And certainly when it involves your children, I mean, this is a tough choice. They need the education. On the other end, you're very concerned that they don't go, in the process of learning and end up being very ill. It's not fair to any of them.
Well, out of curiosity, do you know the percentages of children that are below, let's say, the age of 12 that are becoming sick because of this virus mutation or whatever scientific term you want to give it?
Yeah, I don't know the percentages. I mean, I haven't followed it recently, but over the last 2 to 3 weeks, it's spiking up.
But my question is, do you think it's more than 2% of the children, young population, 1%?
Well, looking at the rest of it, well, number one, we're still on the cusp of really transferring to the Delta variant, which is more contagious and more severe. And we really haven't, the numbers are rising, not exponentially, but they are rising. So we don't really know. The kids aren't in school. They're not really, in a classroom of a contained, environment with air exchanges and so forth, whether they have masks or not. We really don't know what this effect is until the fall comes along. Even if it was less than 1%, that's not going to be the case in a couple of months.
But if a child got sick at home, I'm assuming that child would still go to the hospital. And if it was one of these, if it was a Delta variant case or COVID, it would be reported as such, right?
I would expect that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the child is with parents, with family. The children on my block, they play together freely, just like they always have. And so there's a lot of contact and, sharing of drinks, whatever. So perhaps there are some precautions that could be made whereby the student still stays in the classroom. But I really have an issue with, and I'll leave it at this because I've said it already, with especially in classrooms, many are not air conditioned. They're uncomfortable to begin with. Education is difficult as it is, especially when the resources aren't there that are needed. And I think with the warming temperatures, air conditioning is very important, especially early fall or early September and early part of, let's say, May and June now. And to have them wear a mask for 8 hours, which mask? A cloth mask is not effective. And I think breathing in not enough has been discussed on breathing in your own carbon dioxide and your own mucus. Are you going to put a mask on a kindergartner? I really would question that before I would sign off on a child doing that just through a blanket decree. So what I wanted to thank the governor was holding off on issuing such a blanket decree. Perhaps they're doing the research that you're mentioning or alluding to. So we'll see, Kurt. But I appreciate your input, and I appreciate the honest discussion. So I'm going to shift gears. I wanted to just touch base on an article that Fred sent me. Fred is a friend, and Fred has been on this program. Fred, Kurt, you know Fred, right?
I do.
Yes, you do. And I'm just going to mention that Fred has a unique point of view. He was a student teacher. He went into finance afterwards, but he was a math teacher. He was active in his local community. He ran for school board, and he was actually on the school board for 9 years. Through 4 of those years, he was the school committee president. And so he dealt with everything from union arrangements, teachers' union, custodians' union, because he dealt with the budget for the school system, to teachers, to custodians, unions, and also to curriculum. And it's curriculum that I wanted to just touch base on. Perhaps we'll just, because we're leaving at 6:30, perhaps, Kurt, we could just touch on this. So Fred sent me this Wall Street Journal article, and it was the debate over civics. Now, Kurt, when you went through school, did you take anything called civics as a subject?
No, I didn't. Not until I got into college.
Okay. Do you think you missed out on anything by not having been exposed to civics class in middle school or high school? Why not?
Hard to say. I mean, I think I turned out okay without having it, but no, I mean, I think I had a good general education.
Okay. Did you take geography and history?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. It seems to me, I took geography and history too. It was called social studies, kind of watered down. World history was another version. But you and I have talked about Afghanistan and our withdrawal from Afghanistan after, and I'm going to say this because the results, you judge a period in time by the results. Wasted 20 years of American and NATO involvement in Afghanistan. And then you and I made the correlation or drew parallels between the American experience or involvement in Afghanistan and our involvement in Vietnam in the 60s and early 70s. Do you remember we discussed that, what was it, a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. When Fred sent me this newspaper article, Wall Street Journal, debate over civics, I thought if we had focused in the 60s up until now on really teaching history, by history I mean political history, religious history, geography, because one goes with the other, and forms of government which I think would touch on civics, aristocracies, dictatorships, democracies. There are others on either side of those groups, but I just thought, would it have been so easy to sell America on a 20-year involvement in Afghanistan, or which cost 2,407 lives, 1,645 people came back with major amputations from bombs, losing their limbs. Some of them came back quadriplegics, losing everything. Quite a sacrifice. And then Vietnam, 62 to 73, so 11 years there, 50,000 American dead. I'm just throwing this out here. Would it have been as easy to sell the public on fighting in Vietnam at such a great human cost and material cost, and also fighting in Afghanistan, again at a huge material cost? Afghanistan cost us roughly $2 trillion, and we lost What, 2,400 men and women and 20,000 wounded. Among those, the 1,600 some odd amputees, major amputees. Would it have been easy to sell the public on these two wars had there been better instruction on the very least the Far East, the other side of the world where we seem to be engaging in these conflicts? What do you think, Kurt? I'm just trying to. What I'm trying to say is I'm hoping that such an experience is avoidable with education.
I think in the case of us being involved in Afghanistan really doesn't have the same parallel with us getting involved in Vietnam. Because of 9/11 and the sting of losing, 3,000 people in New York and in Pennsylvania, it looked like America was really out for vengeance. And our involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan seemed to be so focused and so easy to push through because Americans wanted revenge for the perpetrators. And it wasn't necessarily Afghanistan, and certainly not Iraq, that created it, but they knew that the perpetrators were there and they were kind of a breeding ground. And I'm not sure that, a strong sense of civics would have prevented that from occurring. Maybe it would have prevented a 20-year involvement, but certainly, I think that would have happened regardless. In Vietnam, we were not threatened. It was the domino theory of going across Indochina with communism is why we got involved there in the early 60s. But, I think our involvement in Afghanistan would have happened regardless.
Well, certainly there was a threat, two very different threats. One was a system of government, communism, and as you so rightly say, they were afraid of the domino effect throughout Southeast Asia. And you had the Soviet bloc, a different kind of communism, but still you had the two against one, so to speak. And I think to a certain extent, having three superpowers has worked in preventing a nuclear war because one can be worked against the other, so to speak. But I think the threat during the Cold War was very real. The Reds were out to get us. And instead of the Reds, it's the terrorists. And the terrorists struck us with these plane attacks. And I'm hoping that someday the files are open on the investigation into 9/11 and that more information is given. Because quite frankly, sometimes I question if we've been given all the information or if this was a manufactured excuse, just like there was a manufactured excuse for us to get involved in Vietnam. I believe there was a staged boat attack, Navy vessel attack in some bay along the coast of Vietnam, and that was used as a reason to really militarize the conflict, our confrontation with the Viet Cong and Ho Chi Minh. I'm praying and I hope that 9/11 was not a manufactured provocation to get us in a war on terrorism. I'm hoping, but we'll see. Time will tell. I think the truth will come out in the next couple of years as more classified information is declassified. But there certainly was a desire for vengeance, desire to... we had the same desire for vengeance when the hostages were taken in Iran and President Jimmy Carter was unable to win their release. There was the song Bomb, 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 Iran. Do you remember that song?
Yes, I do.
All right, so there was a desire for vengeance, nuke the place. That was the reaction, nuke Iran, as if you could nuke a country that's probably the size of Texas. And then, of course, the Osama bin Laden. The Taliban had offered, again, I mentioned this before, they had offered Osama bin Laden to the U.S. through a third party, but the U.S. was more intent on going in with the military and taking control of the administration or the government of Afghanistan. And again, I sometimes question the official narrative because what is in Afghanistan? Opium. And our CIA, our security agency, has used opium as a type of trading tool for arms. They did it with cocaine in fighting rebels in Central America. They did it with the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union, when it was their turn to fight in Afghanistan. There was an exchange of arms for cocaine, for heroin, and the U.S. saw a spike in heroin usage during this period of time in the 80s. So I think there's a lot that is not being reported in Afghanistan insofar as the role of opium, who is making money from the opium trade. And I think it'll be interesting to see if the Taliban, as we've said before, if the Taliban remains true to its principles and wipes out the growing of opium or narcotics, which is against against the Quran, as they did in the late 90s, and substitute that for something else to keep the farmers busy and to keep the farmers fed, because it is largely an agricultural country. So just off the top of my head, there's many ways this can go, but I think we are sometimes ill-served by the media that focuses on whether or not a woman can get elected to office in Afghanistan. It's a much deeper situation, and we're dealing with a culture that has not changed in 2,000 years and adamantly is not going to change because it believes its life is guided by the Quran, by Sharia law, and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad. And I think that's one of the reasons we got our asses kicked in Afghanistan. The Russians got their butts kicked. The British got their butts kicked because they didn't realize you cannot change the way people think spiritually, religiously in 10 to 20 years. You're not going to win them over by annihilating them or trying to through technology or by preaching a democracy whereby it's apparent what you're proposing. And again, that's the role of women in the East as opposed to the role of women here in the West, which is still evolving. So it's almost time to say sayonara, das vidanya, Kurt. So is there anything else? We will pick up again on this next week. Is there anything else you would like to add or share right now before we say that?
Once again, for the remaining Americans that are over there in Afghanistan trying to get out, let's just hope that over the next week that somehow they'll get them out, because I just hope we don't end up with a bunch of more hostages than Iran ever had at their embassy. This is going to be a tough week, and they're quite fervent on having us out by September 1. So
9/11
who knows
actually.
what's going to happen?
Kurt, I believe it's 9/11, the 11th of September, according to President Biden.
Oh, I thought we had till the end of the month.
He changed it.
Sure on that?
Yes. The 9/11 is very significant.
But I don't think the Afghanis did.
No, they want us.
They want us out.
They want us out. They like our hardware. They're keeping our helicopters, but they want our personnel and our values out. Yep. All right, Kurt. We'll talk again soon. Thank you for joining. And again, das vidanya.
Spasibo.
All right, cheers. Everybody have a good weekend. God bless. And again, keep our men and women in your prayers that are over in Afghanistan trying to deal with chaos. Thank you, and good evening. Bye-bye, Kurt.
Bye now.